Hello, hello, hello. Nate here with the Volunteer Tech Vlog on the Live Sound 101 YouTube channel. This is a YouTube channel where, since I am a student of audio and video technology, I always want to learn something new about it. And if you're a student and you're looking to learn something new, you might find this interesting. So I talk candidly about doing live sound as a volunteer on part of an all-volunteer team at my church. But I'm also a systems integrator for a commercial, well, actually a medical solutions company. So I do systems integration, AV design as my full-time job, but not really in the same arena, if you will, in a more very specific niche, the integrated operating room. So that's kind of where I make my money and I do my day job, but then I volunteer on the weekend. So I'm about to drive to the church, and with that, let's drive. These are let's drive videos, so I get the camera all set up, recording, and then I get in my car and I'm on my merry way, and I'm chatting with you about some sort of topic in Pro AV and live sound. And this is kind of a good way for me to get my thoughts out, get my ideas out, but then also share information with people all over the world who are interested in learning about this stuff. And it's pretty cool. So it started out, I just wanted to train some people kind of in my community to do live sound. And I figured, you know what, rather than have one-on-one sessions where I try to sit down and explain things to somebody one-on-one, I can have a one-on-one session with the camera, and whoever wants to tune in to the Live Sound 101 YouTube channel, you can come for a ride in my car and we can chat. And you can leave comments, and I can respond to your comments in video format. So that's the whole point of this. Now, before we get going too far, I did want to say what I want to talk about in this video is filters, and how I have used filters and how I have found success using filters, kind of what they are, how they're related to EQ, and really how they're kind of the next step in the process. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. I have been making some longer form content, so I have Windbag sessions 1, 2, 3, and 4. I made a little playlist for those ones. So those videos are over 40 minutes, like 40, 50 minutes long. This video, I'm just driving to the church, so it's about a 10-minute drive. So it's obviously going to be a 10-minute video, and that's kind of like, that's the typical video on this channel. It's been a little 10-minute video. So with that, I think that's a good it's a good point for me to now jump on into the subject matter. So filters. Now this is going to be an audio lesson. So we've talked about setting levels per channel, per instrument, and the different, mindset or philosophy for setting levels per channel. And then we've talked about setting levels for the system, because then you've got system, master gain settings, maybe on an audio DSP, maybe coming out of your mixer. However you're doing signal processing, there's some sort of master adjustments that need to be made right, like on the amplifier. That's really a big one, is where do you set the gain or the volume knob on an amplifier. And wow, this is really crooked. Why is it so crooked? Sorry about that. It's a bright sunny day. So we talked about levels, setting levels. We've talked about what else? We have recording methods and different ways you can record. So the next thing, so after you're setting levels and you got things, I'm thinking from when you come in the morning, what I'm about to go do is, patch things in, get my level set. The next thing I'm going to want to do is EQ. And this is where filters come in, because I have been trained, I've been taught to always reach for a filter first. Exactly why that is, I think it has to do with, in an analog system, there's different electronics and circuitry involved in a filter. And if you really only need to engage one filter to accomplish what you want to accomplish, by adjusting the frequency of the spectrum of the frequency on a specific channel, a filter is a good way to go. So if you think about an analog system, and I think that's probably why I was trained to reach for the filters first, as opposed to reach for you know, like a graphic EQ or a parametric EQ. On some of these analog systems, if you wanted to use these parts of the signal chain, you actually had to engage or disengage them, and when you engage them, you route the audio through a new corridor, if you will, a new path in the board. So the audio signal, if you're engaging an analog section of a, you know, inline console, now you're routing that audio through new pieces of electronics. And the whole thinking to try to keep things transparent and record high fidelity, you really want your signal path to be as short as possible. So kind of like the whole less is more rule. If you don't have to use it, don't engage it. And it's amazing. I think I have videos on this. Is by just hitting the bypass button, it's amazing how sometimes that can do work wonders if you've got a piece of equipment that is not configured properly or has been messed with. A great little A/B test is to just hit that bypass button and disengage a piece of the signal chain and see what happens to your mix, see what happens to your sound quality. So that's kind of the thinking about why I think I was trained to reach for the filter first, because it could be a cleaner path to reaching the same end goal versus engaging a parametric EQ, where now you're tempted to do all kinds of other things. Parametric EQs obviously have a lot more flexibility in terms of what you can do, but usually a filter, let's just talk about kind of the basic use cases for filters. So one of the most common uses for filters that every live sound person should be aware of is the low cut filter, which is also the same as a high pass filter. So just think of it this way: you're passing the highs, you're cutting the lows. So you can describe that as a high pass or a low cut. And where that cut happens, it depends on the type of filter. So you can engage a filter that might be a fixed filter that's going to cut everything and roll it off at a certain dB per octave at like 100 hertz. That's probably the most common one. Maybe 150 hertz or 200 hertz, or you might have an adjustable filter where you can tell the filter what frequency, where you want the roll off to start. And so like 100 hertz cut, low cut, high pass is very common on vocals, because you don't want to pick up the bass guitar bleeding into a vocal mic, or you know, rumbling from an air conditioner unit that's vibrating the stage, or there's just usually not a lot of audio content in that part of the spectrum coming from a vocalist, you know, down at like 100 hertz. I guess the only exception I would say is to be careful of is if you're doing some sort of like beatboxing a cappella group where they're doing like some crazy stuff with their voices, and then you want to pay a little bit more attention to that. But for the most part, you can clean your mix up a lot just by putting some filters, some low cut, high pass filters on your vocals. So that's the very next thing I would say to reach for. After you've patched everything in, after you have set your levels, you've set the gain structure, you've gotten a good sound check, you've communicated clearly with the musician to get a good performance intensity for the sound check, because that's the thing you want to avoid, is having like a really quiet sound check and then having the musician do something completely different prime time when it counts. So after you've done all that, you want to start cleaning up the mix. I would say locate your channels, your vocal channels, and you might consider putting a filter on the vocal channels that cuts the low frequencies out. And maybe you've got some other things too, like in addition to you know, vocals. Maybe you have something else that is in a higher register that really has no business. You have no business dealing with you know, 100 hertz and below. You might want to apply some filters, and that can just right there, that can clean up your mix a lot without even having to do a whole lot of EQ. But then after that, maybe that's going to be another video. Maybe we'll talk more about EQ. But first, I would reach for the filter. That's my personal preference. It's kind of how I was trained. And there's also high cut filters or low pass filters. So if you've got, you know, a kick drum and the piccolo player is standing right next to the kick drum, which would probably never happen, but just theoretically, the kick drum's got a lot of low frequency stuff in there. You probably don't want to pick up the high stuff. So the filter can block out some of the higher stuff on that specific channel. Yeah, that's my little audio minute for today, my little audio lesson. Let's see, I kept this around 10 minutes, 11 minutes long, so not too bad. So I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna set up. Josh is doing music today, and I'll come back with a report for the next video. Talk to you later. Oh, I always do that. My thumb is so fat.